Hi, I'm Dr. Boyce Watkins. Thank you for checking out Dr. Boyce Watkins on AOL Black Voices. And today I wanted to bring back what I consider to be an all-star panel of people who just have so many opinions that they just can't get them all out. But they are awesome people to speak to. And on my left, I have Dr. James Wadley, who is the author of the book Would You Marry You?
Would You Marry You?
And Miss Estia Brown from Essence and AOL Black Voices, as well as everywhere else. Good to see you again. And Miss China Okasi from MadameNoir.com, M-A-D-A-M-E, Noir, N-O-I-R.com. and Mr. George James, and your company's called George Talks.
George
LLC.
Talks, and I practice at Council for Relationships.
Yes, with the Council for Relationships. Okay, and so what we wanted to talk about very quickly was I wanted to get your take on this whole cheating situation where it's interesting because when I write for AOL Black Voices, every single week I'm writing about a celebrity divorce or some celebrity getting caught cheating or whatever. And recently we saw something with Fantasia, and she attempted suicide allegedly, and a lot of it was related to something going on with a married man, and people had a lot to say about that. And then there was this thing with Alicia Keys and Swiss Beats and the baby and the marriage and all that stuff going on, and Tiger Woods and his 8,000 mistresses that he had from every porn shop in America, apparently. And so and not really to talk about those specific people, but I was curious to get your take on just celebrity marriages in general, and when you talk specifically, say, about the Fantasia thing, what sort of went through your head, Dr. Wadley, when you first read about Fantasia's suicide attempt and all that stuff?
Between Fantasia and Alicia Keys and all the other people that you name, I was thinking about all the assumptions that people make about relationships, and that we make the assumption that just because somebody's attractive, that one, they may be available, and two, that they're willing to work on a relationship with us. We make an assumption about the marriages that some of these people had, in that people marry to be happy, and people marry for the same reason, and that's totally erroneous. Or people, another assumption is that all women want to have, as we talked about earlier, a full-time man, and that may not be true.
So you don't think all women want a full-time man?
Some do, some do, and I don't want to create a monolith.
They like it. They just don't know they like it.
Well, I have clients, and I have spent time with different people who are okay with open relationships or open marriages. And so to say that this person is bad or this person is wrong, it's hasty. And I think that if we actually heard these people's stories, all the players that you name, we may find out a totally different story than what we anticipated having.
Okay. So do you think that I have to go right to Tia, not just because she's on your left, but because I always see her body language whenever a man has any opinion whatsoever.
I respect your opinion.
Yeah, that's not true. She don't respect it. She's gonna eat you up, man. You might want to move your chair over.
It's going down.
But so what do you think? I mean, when he says, for example, I asked this: if every man was allowed just one mistress, and his wife had to know who she was and everything else, do you think the divorce rate would go down? If so,
Boyce,
why?
we always argue about
the
this
murder rate
of
might go up. But go ahead.
I hear you. I did listen to everything you said, and I will give you that. I do think some people are okay with open relationships. My question is always why. And is it because I think that this is all I can have? Is this because I don't feel worthy of something, or is this because this is something I want? I specifically question it when it's open on one side.
Right.
So it's okay.
Good point.
He can do whatever he wants, and then I need to wait home, or she needs to be waiting at home until he's ready to deal with her. And so being oppressed in any manner is not something that most people look forward to. So that's from like the life coach perspective. If I look at it from the pop culture expert perspective, the first thing I think about is brand management. You look at Fantasia, and you can really see that either she didn't have the proper PR team or she didn't follow their instructions, because there are certain things that you just don't handle publicly, that you just don't do publicly, and there are ways that you refute certain things. Alicia Keys, she made sure that her brand always screamed elegance, class, intelligence. Fantasia allowed her brand to be built around being the victim, around being less than, around being the girl who made it, by happenstance, not by talent, and that continued from not only how she dressed, but how she spoke, how she managed the story of her life. So when something like this happens, and not only do you say, okay, I'm dating this man, it's been 11 months, I thought he was separated from his wife, but then you unfortunately are in a state where you decide that you want to take your life, and then the next week you're talking about it. What does that make your brand look like? If you're going out publicly, you know, at local beaches hanging out with him, what does that say about your brand? You know, if you're not waiting until the dust settles, you know, and I think that that's the biggest error that she made, because you're right, we don't know what happened behind closed doors. I believe in both cases it's quite possible that those marriages were over before they met these women and before they decided to move on, and you know, just legally there could have been some lag time, but it's all about presentation.
So China, do you think that there was a PR angle to all of this with Fantasia? I mean, it was interesting because one of my friends, one of my therapist friends said, I don't take her seriously because people who really want to commit suicide, they commit suicide. And so she said that, or her theory, which I didn't disagree with completely or saw to be quite plausible, was that that this whole conversation about, you know, I thought about killing myself because my career was sliding, and this whole thing with the married man and all that was not necessarily a fully contrived publicity stunt, but something where they said, you know what, the spotlight is back on you, we're going to milk this cow until the udders fall off. So what do you think?
Yeah, you wrote about that for Madame Noir, and I thought it was very interesting, although I just don't think... I mean, I think that there are other things going on in Fantasia's life besides her affair with this man. When people compare Alicia to Fantasia and they say, well, Alicia's brand was intact and, you know, Fantasia's wasn't, you know, it's like, to me, Fantasia has always been this round-away, dress any old way kind of girl who presents herself, you know, however she chooses to present herself, and Alicia
kind of ghetto to me.
I do want to use the
Look at you.
She was talking about her big trucks in the front yard. She's like, I'm rolling on big things. She said something like that. I'm like, okay.
And I love
the brand has always been.
I love Fantasia's voice. In fact, I remember one of the few times I was watching American Idol. I just remember she did blow me away, and she has her voice, and Alicia has her voice, and you know, even though she has an honorary GED and you know, Alicia.
Wait, did you say honorary?
Yeah, she has an honorary degree, and it's an honorary high school. I'm sorry, an honorary high school diploma.
What is an honorary GED?
You didn't ask the people who gave it to her. Somebody went and gave GED. Fantasia an honorary high school diploma.
Yeah, that's because you want to be able to say she's an alum from that school.
Wait. So she doesn't? Does she actually have a real GED?
Well, I know on Fantasia for Real, the reality series that she did, she still had not received her GED. She was going through counseling, and remember, her book came out in 2004 talking about this. So you know, to me, it just said a lot that in those 6 years, or let's say even 5 years from when the reality show was actually shot, you did not move forward and doing the things necessary to protect your brand. That's the basic thing that you do. And so when you talk about, you know, her always being like around the way girl, you have to think about business.
Yeah, but I don't understand the comparison between Fantasia and Alicia Keys. They're two separate brands. How does Alicia look any better for, you know, gallivanting with a married man than Fantasia does?
But you never saw a headline that Alicia Keys was having an affair. You never saw that. Swiss Beats just divorced his wife, and then they got married a few weeks later, and you never saw a headline that said Alicia Keys is having an affair.
But if she tried to commit suicide, you would have seen that.
That was even before Fantasia just tried to commit suicide.
One of the things that I think is interesting, the whole thing, right? A couple of things I was thinking, right? Well, one, right, between the two of them, I agree that we make assumptions, right? We project our thoughts onto people. We do this in our own relationships. Whether someone's attractive, that must mean they're nice or that they're a good person, right? So most people would find Alicia Keys more attractive than Fantasia.
And she's light-skinned,
right? And there's so many places that we could go with that, right? But what I'm saying, we project all these things thinking that Alicia Keys is this great person.
Who is we?
The American public.
No, you know why we think she's great? Because we see her doing volunteer work. We see her raising $25 million.
Would do that.
We see her traveling to Saint-Tropez and not to Myrtle Beach. You know, we see her wearing the proper clothing, couture clothing. We see her socializing with, you know, Clive Davis.
And we think that means a good person wouldn't cheat, wouldn't have an affair.
So wouldn't that be a harder fall for Alicia Keys if someone we hold to such high esteem falls?
Not when you have your PR
actually,
people
studies have said that when we find
Cool.
somebody in a high regard and we see them mess up, we think that, oh, they're more like us now. Right. So now we accept them just a little bit more,
You love them more.
versus somebody who's just mediocre or average. When they fall, we put them all the way down
So
in the
what are you
trash.
concluding about Fantasia now versus Alicia Keys?
That some people might now see her that she's more like us.
Right.
Those people who have faults, who might have done
Alicia
the
or
things.
Fantasia?
No,
Alicia.
see, Alicia